the executive director of NRA's Institute for Legislative Action. Chris Cox is with us in studio. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Cam. Today's the day. It's fight night.
Yeah, happy election day to you.
I appreciate it. Hope you voted.
I did,
All right.
absolutely. And so let's ask, first question, how do you feel, generally speaking, about the chances for gun owners across the country today?
You know what? I feel good, and it's because gun owners recognize what's at stake. We live in a frightening time, and we play a critical role in any given election cycle. And this one, you hear it every 2 years. This is the most important election in the history of mankind. If you look at what we're up against, there's no question that we're facing the most well-funded, most well-coordinated attack. And gun owners across the country know that. They're not being fooled by the Johnny-come-lately politicians who are wearing the shooting vest and pulling the John Kerry type goose pit, right before an election. And they recognize what's at stake, and I think gun owners are going to respond in huge numbers. I think the passion and the energy for this freedom is there, and I think it's going to be a good night.
You know, we saw a number of stories over the past couple of weeks, mainstream media types wondering, where's the gun vote, or where's the gun issue? And what they're really asking is, where are the gun control voters? Bloomberg said he was going to spend $50 million. And where is this? Gallup comes out with a poll showing support for new gun control laws now under 50%. Support among women has dropped over the past 2 years from 69 to 55%. And it seems like the energy, the intensity really is on the side of gun owners, particularly in those states where we've seen gun control laws passed the past couple of years. Denver Post had one of the reporters out at polling places, interviewed a restaurant manager who said that he voted for Bob Beaupre and for Cory Gardner in large part because of the gun issue.
Well, the first issue is, where's Bloomberg? He's out there. They are spending tens of millions of dollars across the country, not just through his Everytown group, but personal checks that he's written, his Independence USA PAC, funding Harry Reid's Super PAC. So his money is being filtered all through and spread out all across the country. We saw it in the sheriff's race in Milwaukee County. Mm-hmm. We're certainly seeing it in the Senate races and House races and critical governor's races. So is it out there? Yes. But where are the hearts and minds for all that money? Can he buy the hearts and minds of the American people? We've got a congressional district down in Arkansas 2, where one of Mayor Bloomberg's MAG mayors has been out there misrepresenting his position, saying that he's an NRA guy, misusing Wayne's likeness in flyers that were paid for and mailings that were paid for by the Arkansas Democratic Party. We've had to threaten to sue them, trying to get them to stop misrepresenting their positions. But you don't see gun supporters out running saying, no, I'm a Bloomberg guy.
Right.
But you have gun control supporters saying, no, I'm an NRA supporter. So it's indicative as to where these politicians fall, because they know that the hearts and minds of their constituents are just like the hearts and minds of the rest of their fellow Americans that support this issue. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bloomberg fares with all of his money he invested.
Well, absolutely. You know, one of the things that he said when he was talking about how much money he was going to spend this year, he said he wanted politicians to fear Everytown like they fear the NRA. I don't even know if fear is the right word to use, but the power of the NRA, and you've talked about this quite a bit, it comes from the members. It comes from the fact that politicians know on Election Day, members show up at the polls, they vote, they contact their officials on issues that are important to them. They are involved not just on Election Day, but every day in the political process.
The NRA's strength comes from 5 million average Americans across this country who voluntarily join this organization because they want to speak, just like you learned in 7th grade civics class, speak with a louder collective voice. That's what Michael Bloomberg's money can't buy. He can't buy a following. He can buy some headlines. He can go in at the very end, try to buy some wins in some of these races, but he can't buy the hearts and minds of the American people for two reasons. One, they support the Second Amendment. They support this choice, this God-given freedom that you have a choice to make or not make. And what he also can't seem to understand is people don't like him. You know, they don't want to be told by an arrogant billionaire how to live their lives. They don't want to be told what to drink, what to eat, and they sure as hell don't want to be told by a guy with armed security 24/7 that they can't have a gun for self-defense. It's the height of hypocrisy. Americans like a lot of things. They love an apology. They love rehab. They hate hypocrites. Michael Bloomberg's the ultimate.
Talking with Chris Cox, NRA ILA's executive director. one of the things that we're seeing this year, not just elections but ballot initiatives. In Washington, in Colorado, actually, they were planning on putting a ban on campus carry before the voters. Then they decided, let's not do it this year. We think it'll save lives, but we're not going to do it this year. But in Washington State, we have I-594. This is being billed as the universal background check bill. It would criminalize all kinds of common, legal, safe, responsible behavior among gun owners. And there's been millions of dollars poured into this campaign, not just from Bloomberg, but from Paul Allen, from Bill Gates, from Steve Ballmer. Is this, Chris, is this one of the areas where gun control advocates are going to start doing more? Are we going to start seeing more of these statewide referendums?
Well, what we've seen is when we're winning in Congress, they move to the legislatures. When we're winning in the legislatures, they try to abuse the legal system. What we've seen now is really kind of a fourth leg to that stool, which is ballot initiatives. It sets up well for wealthy people to write big checks, have an issue talked about by mainstream media that certainly is against law-abiding gun owners by, leaps and bounds. We all know that. But what's going to be really interesting, Cam, is you've heard Bloomberg's polling. 90% of the American people support this. 80-some-odd% of NRA, bogus numbers, but 80-some-odd% of NRA members support it. I forgot what the figure they used, 92% of people in Washington State. Let's see if they get 92% of the voters in Washington State. Let's see what that number ends up being. Despite being outspent at least 10-1, maybe more, we'll see how overwhelming that vote ends up being. It's going to be closer than people think. Talking
with Chris Cox here, and look, a lot of these races are really close. At least if you look at the last polling, a couple of the races, Colorado, Cory Gardner in the U.S. Senate, and Bob Beaupre for governor. These are both races that the NRA's been watching, involved in pretty closely, right?
We have been. We're involved in, as you know, thousands of races from the local level up to these U.S. Senate races that are getting the most attention, and understandably so. We all have the collective goal of making sure that Harry Reid's no longer the majority leader of the Senate, and that's for a number of reasons, and primarily for no other reason, the Senate needs to flip, as we've talked about before, based on judicial nominees, not just Supreme Court justices, even though that's critical, but all these federal judgeships and appointments that are being made. But we've been involved in races all across the country, and not just the Colorados, but it's going to be interesting. A lot of people are watching Connecticut to see what happens in that governor's race. But we have big governor's races all across the country on top of all these big Senate races, and a lot of really important House races. We've got Minnesota 8 that we've talked about, Arkansas 2. There are critical races across this country. So for your listeners, it's not too late. Get out and vote. Let's send a message to the Obamas and Harry Reids and Michael Bloombergs that this freedom's not theirs to negotiate away, and it sure as hell is not theirs to buy, Michael Bloomberg. And if we do that and we continue to keep our eye on the ball, I think we're going to have a good night.
I hope so. I've had folks ask, what's the point? We don't have. We could take back the Senate. We could have 65 votes, but we're not going to do anything with President Obama in office. He's in office for 2 more years, then we have a presidential election. These are Senate terms that are 6 years or more. Exactly. You do the math. You want to have a strong pro-gun majority in place when the next time you got an opportunity to put a strong pro-gun president in place. And until then, as you say, we've got all kinds of judicial appointments. We've got the
lifetime judicial appointments.
Absolutely.
These Supreme Court justices that Obama has appointed and have been confirmed are young and radical and will be around for a long time. They will impact this country for the next 40, 50 years. So we shouldn't underplay the significance of these not just Supreme Court, but the federal justices judges that you talked about. But the other thing, Wayne LaPierre did a final get out the vote push that was a great message. And one of the things that he said, I was watching it again this morning, is he said if you feel like your vote doesn't matter, if you feel like it doesn't count, and you choose to sit out, someone else is going to fill your space. And it's not going to be somebody who cares about this freedom. Don't let that happen. We win when we're all united and walking together and marching together towards that ultimate freedom and the protection of that freedom. We lose when apathy sits in. We lose when people get understandably frustrated with what's going on with these clowns, and they don't feel like their vote matters. They don't feel like it's worth participating. It's worth participating. The Second Amendment is up in every election cycle, and it's up to us to turn out and prove those people who say that NRA represents grassroots, prove them right. That we represent what's right with America by sticking together and standing up for freedom. That's who we are. That's what we believe in, and we'll continue to do well as long as we participate.
Well, listen, Chris, I appreciate you coming in this afternoon. It's great seeing you, sir, and best of luck to you and NRA members all across this country on Election Day.
We're all in this together. I'm proud of this organization. As I said when we first started today, this organization's never been more important in the history of this country. We have the opportunity to really start to move things back in the right direction. So for all those Americans out there and all your listeners who are worried, who are scared, who are frustrated, disappointed, tonight's our night. It's game time, so let's go.
All right, Chris, thank you, sir.
Cam, great to be with you.
Great seeing you, man.
Thank you.